On October 30th, 2000, Singapore Airlines Flight 006 was set to begin the first leg of its extensive multi-leg journey from Singapore to Los Angeles via Taipei. The flight crew, comprising a highly experienced 41-year-old captain, a competent first officer, and a seasoned relief pilot, had no reason to suspect the tragic turn their mission would take. With thousands of collective flying hours and solid track records, this trio represented the professionalism expected from one of the world's most respected airlines. The aircraft, a nearly new Boeing 747-400, was in excellent mechanical condition. Nothing in the initial stages of their journey suggested the impending disaster that would ultimately unfold on a rain-lashed, wind-battered runway in Taipei. Typhoon Zangsane looms. While preparing for departure from Singapore, the crew carefully reviewed meteorological reports indicating that Typhoon Zangsane was en route to Taipei. Expected to arrive after their scheduled departure the next day, it raised operational concerns, especially for the leg from Taipei to Los Angeles. The pilots, confident in their schedule and their capabilities, pressed forward. Runway 05, right at Taipei's Taoyuan International Airport, had been partially closed due to maintenance work, with only sections of it being used as a taxiway. The crew took note, but deemed it irrelevant for their operations. After a smooth flight from Singapore, the aircraft landed in Taipei under increasingly hostile weather conditions, marked by heavy rain and gusty winds. Plans change amid heavy weather. The next evening, the flight crew reconvened under even worse weather. Rain pelted the airfield, visibility dropped, and strong crosswinds gusted up to 52 knots. During pre-flight discussion, the captain proposed a change to depart using runway 05 left instead of their originally planned runway 06. His reasoning was sound. Runway 05 left was a Category 2 runway, offering better lighting, more length and width, and lower takeoff minimums. The decision, while sensible, led them into unfamiliar territory. The last time any of the pilots had used runway 05 left was over 2 years prior. The alternative route would require navigating a more complex taxi route during near whiteout conditions, compounded by the closure of the adjacent runway for construction. An ominous pre-flight walk-around. The relief pilot volunteered to perform the exterior walk-around, only to return with soaking wet shoes. Standing water on the apron was significant enough to drench his footwear, a potential red flag for runway contamination. Despite this, he didn't share what he saw, assuming his colleagues were too busy preparing for departure. This silence would later prove crucial. Singapore Airlines procedures at the time did not allow for runway contamination assumptions unless reported directly by air traffic control. Other carriers had already classified the runway as contaminated, which would have halved the allowable crosswind limit from 30 to 15 knots, making takeoff legally and operationally impossible. The fatal taxi route misinterpretation. At 23:06 local time, the aircraft pushed back, facing west rather than east as expected. A new taxi clearance was issued, guiding the plane via Sierra Sierra, West Cross, and November Papa. This route was shorter than anticipated, but unfamiliar and added complexity to an already tense situation. In Singapore, the green taxiway centerline lights were programmed to illuminate only the assigned path. Taipei, however, had all taxiway lights on simultaneously, placing the onus on pilots to navigate correctly. This discrepancy, though seemingly minor, played a significant role in the confusion that followed. Confusion builds at the edge of the runway. With visibility down to 400 to 500 meters, the captain focused on the green lights ahead, relying on habits formed back home. Unbeknownst to the crew, the green lights guiding them into a right-hand turn were actually steering them onto runway 05 right, the closed runway under maintenance. The correct path, straight ahead toward runway 05 left, had faulty lighting, only 4 functioning lights instead of 16. Additionally, the wigwags, runway guard lights, that should have indicated the active runway's holding point were missing. These layers of technical and procedural shortcomings made it tragically easy for even a seasoned crew to misidentify their location. Crucial clues ignored. As they lined up on what they believed was runway 05 left, several cockpit indicators failed to match expectations. The paravisual display, which should guide takeoff alignment, failed to activate. The localizer showed they weren't centered on the runway. The navigation display indicated an incorrect aircraft position. Yet these clues were downplayed or rationalized. The paravisual display's inactivity was incorrectly attributed to the aircraft not being fully lined up. Confirmation bias had set in. The crew saw what they expected to see rather than what was actually in front of them. The human brain, under stress, is adept at filtering out contradictory information to maintain a coherent narrative. In this case, that narrative was dangerously wrong. Tragedy in the mist. At 23:17, with 4 engines roaring, the Boeing 747 surged forward. Just 11 seconds into the takeoff roll, the captain shouted, "There is something there!" But it was already too late. The aircraft slammed into barriers, construction holes, and heavy machinery. Both engines on the left wing were torn off, thrusting the aircraft into a violent spin. The tail sheared off, wings disintegrated, fuel ignited, a raging fire engulfed the midsection of the jet. Evacuation efforts were chaotic. Several slides failed to deploy properly due to high winds. Others inflated inside the cabin from the immense forces during impact. Despite heroic efforts from the cabin crew, 83 of the 179 people on board died, and 39 more sustained serious injuries. The aftermath and investigation. The investigation into the accident began immediately, facilitated by the fortunate survival of all 3 flight crew members and the swift recovery of the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder. The findings painted a grim but clear picture. The pilots had mistakenly lined up and initiated takeoff from the wrong runway. A critical breakdown in situational awareness occurred during the final stages of taxiing. Despite the crew's experience and professionalism, several contributing factors were identified, including extremely poor weather conditions, inadequate and confusing runway lighting, miscommunication between the crew and air traffic control, and the absence of airport ground radar. This last issue was especially problematic as the radar had been requested years prior but was never installed due to budget constraints. As a result of the investigation, numerous recommendations were issued. Taipei was instructed to upgrade its airfield lighting systems and install the long overdue surface radar. Singapore Airlines was advised to enhance pilot training focused on verifying runway alignment and to include a mandatory checklist item ensuring the aircraft is on the correct runway before initiating takeoff. Additionally, Boeing was called upon to provide clearer guidance on the use of emergency evacuation slides in high wind conditions. A cautionary tale. The tragedy of Flight 006 isn't just a story of technical failure, it's a stark reminder of the human element in aviation. No amount of experience or training can fully eliminate the risk of human error, especially under stress and in poor conditions. This accident illustrates the importance of slowing down, reevaluating assumptions, and listening to that inner voice that warns when something doesn't feel right. It's a lesson that extends beyond aviation into every high-stakes profession. To this day, the story of Flight 006 is studied in crew resource management leadership and decision-making training programs. It teaches that the smallest lapses, if left unchecked, can cascade into catastrophe. But through such analysis, aviation grows safer. The lives lost that night were not in vain. Their legacy lives on in every safety briefing, every pre-flight checklist, and every decision made under pressure. If you found this video as eye-opening as we did, make sure to hit that like button to help others discover it too. Subscribe for more gripping aviation stories, real-life case studies, and safety lessons from the skies. Got thoughts on what went wrong with Flight 006? Drop them in the comments below, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and remember, every flight has a story.